We will move on immediately to the next issue, and you may be reading that the IEA, at a time when we are all discussing the electoral reforms and the need for the Electoral Commission and the IPAC, the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, to hurry in the process, show some urgency in how to do it, and suggestions that they are not doing same, the IEA seems to be showing them the way, and is saying, at least for one of the issues that need to be looked at before 2016, about presiding officers not signing the pink sheets, which led to a court action, let's legislate and have the presiding officers punished. George, what do you say?
Well, I don't know what they are looking at and where and what they are thinking about. You see, a presiding member has a job to do. Presiding officer has been given guidelines as to how that job should be done. If you are going to prescribe punishment for he's not doing or omitting to do a certain job, how are you going to determine that that punishment has come on? You are a lawyer, and I'm happy senior is here. What will be the mens rea? We do first and foremost have to establish the circumstances that led to his not signing there.
They are strict liability offenses. You don't need mens rea to punish.
Yes, but for instance, if for some reason there's an altercation at the polling station, and there was no light or something, and for that matter, the presiding member wouldn't sign, are you going to punish him for it? I believe that first and foremost, the onus is on the Electoral Commission. First of all, to give proper training. Two, to get some caliber of people who they think should be capable of doing their job very well. This is not one of the things I think we should we like legislating in this country too much. Some of these things. Yes, but I'm saying that it's not everything that you legislate about. There are things that we should find practical ways of resolving. Because you see, what is the effect of his non-signature? He has a certain effect, right?
Yes.
But that effect may come about either willfully or by omission. And I'm saying that at what point do we arrive?
For now, if you hear the other arguments, the non-signature, the effect of the non-signature, we are not clear about because of the outcome of the election.
But point is
election
that,
petition.
Yeah, but point is that, you see, for me, I think that is a non-starter. The other argument is a non-starter.
Let me read briefly what the IEA's Dr. Ransford Jampo had to say. And he said, the current regulations provide for election officials to take an oath administered by the district election officer before embarking on their duties. But the IEA recommend that the oath be administered by the district magistrate to bring its effect forcefully to the officials. Any act or omission or commission that flouts this oath should attract severe punishment, including prison sentences. So that's what they are suggesting.
Yeah, I'm saying that to what effect and why would you want to punish somebody with a prison sentence, and at what point? Because you see, I'm saying that when you read the election, the understanding I have had as a lawyer always is that, look, it's a very simple matter. Some presiding member at Savlugu, they've done elections. Every party is represented. All agents have signed that we agree with the results. The results have been announced. For me, even the extra, it's just administrative. The extra action of a presiding officer, because it's a public election. The votes are read, counted in public, in the full view of the public. The announcement is made in the full view of the public. Why should the signature or non-signature of one individual in the chain nullify an election result? To the extent that if he doesn't sign, then he can be sent to jail for it. I think that, look, we should move on. And again, I hope that the IEA will be looking at international best practice. What is the international best practice?
What do you say when you put this recommendation against Regulation 17 of CI 75? Regulation 17.1 is about presiding officers and polling assistants. It says, the Commission shall appoint a presiding officer to each polling station, and then it talks about a number of things. Then it moves on to sub-regulation 5 and says a presiding officer or polling assistant who contravenes the laws and regulations governing the conduct of elections commits an offense and is liable to sanctions applicable under the electoral laws of Ghana.
Yes.
How do you contrast the two?
Yeah, you see, in putting the two together, you ask yourself that, is it a contravention properly so called?
It's a constitutional injunction,
yes,
that you ought to sign.
Yes.
If he doesn't sign,
yes,
has he contravened or not?
You see, it only means that he hasn't, they haven't gone through the administrative process.
But he has not contravened.
And I'm saying that it's for instance, when somebody comes, you know the person has voted, or you know that this person is not allowed to vote, and you allow the person to vote. Those are the principal things that the regulation is looking at.
I see.
And if you really do,
so what's your alternative? What should be done? Because this issue has been agreed, ought to be solved before 2016.
I'm saying that the onus is on the EC. You see, I'll give you a practical example. When I was going through the
what's
election,
your prescription for the EC?
I'm saying that
presiding officers who do not sign,
the EC should have, yes, the EC should have a system where it will ensure that presiding members do their work to the best of their ability.
When they don't, what should happen?
Well, if they don't, there are several things that happen. For instance, they are paid after they have conducted their job. You can withhold their allowance for not doing their job properly.
Okay.
There are many other ways of doing it. But I don't think that some electorate should wait for 3 days for us to determine whether electoral officer has signed or he hasn't signed and why he hasn't signed, all those things. So what happens to the results? If indeed he hasn't signed and he submits it and he's gone off somewhere.
Mr. Akwet, what do you say to the suggestion by the IEA?
Well, I think it's a non-issue because they have not looked at the law. The offences creating section of the law makes it clear that these things are criminal for which they should be punished. Section 30, offences by election officers. An election officer,
which
representation of the people's law.
Okay.
Yeah. An election officer, clerk, interpreter, or other person who has a duty to perform, whether under this law or otherwise, in relation to an election, and who makes in any record, return, or other document which is required to keep or make in pursuance of this law or of regulations made under it, any entry which he knows or has reasonable cause to believe to be false, or does not believe to be true, or B, permits a person whom he knows or has reasonable cause to believe not to be a person who is blind or incapacitated from voting by other physical cause to vote in a manner provided for such persons only, or C, refuses to permit a person whom he knows or has reasonable cause to believe to be a person who is blind or incapacitated from voting by other physical cause to vote in a manner provided for such person. D, willfully prevents a person from voting at the polling station at which he knows or has reasonable cause to believe the person is entitled to vote at, or E, willfully counts a ballot paper as being cast for a candidate when he knows or has reasonable cause to believe was not validly cast for the candidate, or F, without reasonable cause, acts or fails to act in breach of his official duty. And this is the emphasis. Without reasonable cause, acts or fails to act in breach of his official duty, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 1 million cedis, or to imprisonment, or to a term not exceeding 2 years or both. So there is an offense creating section already.
Which affects a presiding officer,
yes, these
who
are
fails to
officers.
sign
Exactly.
the sheet.
Because without reasonable cause, acts or fails to act in breach of what is his official duty. At the end of the day, is it not for him to sign the papers, count the ballots, declare the results, and all that? These are the official duties for which he's been sent there.
Can you explain why this was lost on the entire election petition process?
Well, when I saw your synopsis, my mind immediately went to this law, and I decided to find out whether we don't have offences creating you know, in any part of the law. And whilst reading it, I found it was all there. Because what happens is that we have, over the years, rather looked at offenses created by voters.
The NPP...
Involved in by voters. More than the
NPP's Election Review Committee, which you remember, right?
Mm-hmm.
You, is it Paparusu Nkuma, Godfrey Dami, and so on. You recommended legislation to sanction the non-signing. And you are saying here that there is law that sanctions it.
It's some time ago. I cannot recollect it immediately, whatever it is that we did. But I'm saying that, as far as I'm concerned, I have found this law, except that over the years, we rather look at what voters do, things that voters ought not to do, without directing our attention to the fact that there are things that election officials are also not expected to do.
So you say this is a non-starter?
Yes. Oh yes, because the laws are already
meaning the presiding officers who neglected, refused or failed to sign the pink sheets are liable to criminal action.
Because commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding $1 million or to imprisonment and blah, blah, blah. And the words not being authorized to do or under this, oh, sorry, well, I moved on.
No, the point was
the last
when
one,
they don't do
without reasonable cause, acts or fails to act in breach of his official duty.
Okay.
All we need to do then, you know, is to, you know, rein in, because you can't complain only of the petitioners and their lawyers, what about the Supreme Court itself?
Yeah, but
they also
you see,
made recommendations about how these people ought to be trained and all the
because you see
came from them.
Something at the heart of every election petition is indeed what is the status of the results. For me, that's what was paramount in everybody's mind when we went to the Supreme Court.
Justice Adinira said that those who did that, instead of punishing their sins on the voter, the innocent voter, the EC, the presiding officers should rather be liable to sanction. That's where she stopped. She didn't move on to say we should use this to sanction them in court. So you are saying here and now that the EC should hold those people before the law courts.
Oh, well, it's a criminal matter.
Yes.
So is the Attorney General who will look at it. And if I do recall, there is some injunction, you know, that you cannot start any action involving voting or electoral malpractice without the consent of the Attorney General. And you may know the reason why. You know, if your party has won, why do you hold your people before court if they were involved in some of these difficulties, if you like?
Well, this is good education for all of us, because I must admit I have also not been aware of this, and a number of occasions, we have raised this here, and we have suggested that the law prescribing the sanction does not exist. IEA says that law exists.
The interpretation section defines election officer as follows. Election officer means a registration officer, a returning officer, a deputy assistant registration or returning officer, a presiding officer, or a polling assistant.
Okay. So those who went to the IPAC meeting and ended up arguing with the EC says they cannot be punished under law, and they too couldn't reach any agreement, so they left crying and shouting. Mr. Ikutu is pointing you to the law, that these people can be punished. So let's look at that rather. Abi, what do you say?
So let us also be sure that we don't have any amendments to this law.
Okay.
So I'll check on it quickly.
That's interesting. Okay, so what do you say? Is this the way to go according to the IEA?
But you cannot ask this question again, having the benefit of what has been explained here. Unless you disagree.
What has been explained, that has been caveated. There's a caveat standing.
Yeah.
That's,
so unless
you don't proceed unless
you either you don't agree with him, or that there has been an amendment to this law.
Okay.
But if not, this has cured the mischief.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't progress on that tangent. I wanted to say that, see, it's a national service. You don't criminalize those acts, else you'll find people not going to do that work. I would have said that. I've eaten back my words. Now, let's look at what caused the non-signing of the pink sheets. you notice that the EC came out to say that they had some interaction with the presiding officers.
Yeah.
And they indicated that the reasons why they did not sign was that they didn't even see the signature portion. Apparently because the pink sheet was so condensed with information to the extent that the signature portion was embedded in the middle of that document. That document is actually a document for two activities. They say poll and then something of that nature. But what is the solution? The way forward was provided by the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court indicated that they should try to reduce the amount of information found in that pink sheet and also to detach one set of information from the other set. Now, if you do this, I'm sure the issue of the signature getting embedded in the middle will not be there again, and they cannot complain. I had a lecturer who once told me that the reason why his instructions are in font size 18 is because the previous year the students said they didn't know that they were asked to answer only one question. So they answered all the questions. So this time, he made it font size 18. It has cured it. You can't come back to the lecture and say, oh, sir, I didn't know that I was supposed to answer one question, because it is bold. In that same vein, let's ensure that we reduce the amount of information found in the pink sheet. Then we will not have that excuse again by the presiding officer. They did not see where it was. But as we have been educated now, there is a sanction. But what I'm happy is that these sanctions did not say that if they don't sign, you should annul 14,000, 20,000 people's vote. I'm happy. Because this, what Senior has just read, indicates that you should punish that lousy presiding officer and don't visit his sins on innocent voters who slept overnight.
Why,
and you know, some people use blocks. Some people use chairs and blocks to indicate their places.
I asked him the question. It appears this law eluded them, their team in courts, or for their purposes, decided not to avert their minds to it. So that even after the election petition, when they sat down and reviewed it and made recommendations, one of their recommendations was that we should legislate to punish these people. He has pointed out that the law exists. So even that recommendation itself is faulty.
Yes.
You, in your defense, never anywhere mentioned that there is a law that provides for punishing the presiding officer for not signing.
Yeah, we did not say there was a law, but we said that, broadly speaking, punish those who did that, and not us.
The question I'm asking, how did this elude all of you, including the Supreme Court?
Look, Samson, the law is huge. The law is huge. The law encompasses so many things. It is not out of place for lawyers not to see the law at one point all the time. So this is what I must admit, that
this is the primary election law.
Yes, I must admit that we gloss over. But on our side, we were not concerned about who should be punished. We were concerned about maintaining our votes, that these votes should not go. So we didn't have that extra burden to go and look for what punishment to give to somebody.
No, but truth be told, if you had pointed out this law to the court and say, when you don't sign, there's a sanction for you, and this is the sanction. When you don't sign, it does not amount to invalidating the vote.
Yeah.
You'd have made it easier. So you would
like to admit that. I've considered the law is voluminous. So you cannot possibly see everything about the law. So I admit, both sides, including the Supreme Court, I think he has also said it. So if they are holding us for contempt, I know Senior will be there too. so that's the point. But yeah, so something does it.
Okay. Kuku, what do you say at this point?
Much. I'm still learning and, quite surprised. But maybe I need further education on this matter. Non-signature of the presiding officer. Is that not the issue we are discussing?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, the law that was read, all that law, the functions.
Representation of the People's Act.
Yeah, are we making a deduction?
Yes.
Or we are looking at a categorical indication that non-signature is part of the offences.
There's an omnibus clause.
He's saying that non-signature
That's a
is
failure
part
to perform
your
your official
duties. And he says that
Because
one of
part
the
of it.
main official duties of the presiding officer is to sign the declaration sheet.
The Constitution
but it's not-
uses the word
Shall.
Yeah, but it's not stated black and white.
No,
Now we've had a situation where the Supreme Court has had some ruling on the non-signature.
Exactly.
And appears to have made it look as if it's no big deal. So maybe, and this is from a very ignorant point of view, maybe we must tighten the thing, fine-tune it, let the thing come out in a very clear way. That's all I'm saying, because otherwise it's huge education for me.
The end results of a civil and a criminal action are not the same. You go for a civil matter and you're asking for the votes to be annulled. You are not asking anybody to be punished. But if you had come under this one to say that you did not do your work properly, then perhaps the end result is to apply the sanctions.
Okay, that's interesting.
So that's another.
But something, there was one thing I forgot, and I'm sorry if this is dragging the program back. Amaliba made that point, and I also feel strongly about it. It's to do with the Northern Regional Chairman. Yes, what occurred recently. I think that is very serious, and they ought to be taken. We ought to look at it. I've heard he's issued a statement. I think that is amounts to a pathetic afterthought. It cannot be accepted. You understand? The way he ought not to have gone public at all. If you are talking to your party people and the media people are present, you know how to talk, because there's no basis for what he did. Even if it amounts to betrayal of trust by some delegates, I think finesse and serious disciplinary approach ought not to. So I'm sorry, I wanted to comment.
Yeah, don't worry. We take a quick break here, but before that, Gabi Asari Ochredako wants to explain a point that George Lowe referred to. He says, I have just heard an NDC man on Newsfile referring to some quote-unquote dubious forex accounts mentioned by the NPP chairman, Paul Afoko, when he addressed the press last month. It was one of the most unfortunate statements that I have heard for some time from a person who was in a position to know better. If Chairman Afoko had looked at the signatories, he would have known that the signatories were approved by the party under Chairman Jake to be in charge of fundraising for the 2012 presidential campaign. This was announced to the public when the campaign team was announced. And if he had spoken to them and spoken to the bank, he would have known that not a single dollar had gone into the account or taken out of the account since the December 2012 elections. I still do not understand why that bit was added to the press conference. It beats me. Thank you very much. We will be right back after this break. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. Kwejo Ansasa Sraku says, hi Samson, the NPP will remain stronger after the Congress. It baffles my mind when the NDC tells us who to present in the next general elections. Ernest Kwato, doctor, says, it's a sad story in the NPP, the next viable alternative, and they are messing up big time. Nana should show leadership and close ranks with other aspirants. Then Evans Kwabna says the NPP is on the road to petition. Perdition. It's on the road to perdition. The least said to their internal wrangling, the better we discuss the erratic power supply. 2016 is just around the corner. Ghanaians are ever ready to punish them for them to learn lessons. And George Lowe is smiling at that. And then I'll take this just one or two more here. Kofi Asamoah Mensah says, I think the presiding officers have a solemn responsibility to protect the sanctity of our ballot, and anything contrary to that is a recipe for violence. So the presiding officers should be punished should they do anything untoward with the intent to give undue advantage to a particular candidate and or for any negligence on their part. Thank you very much. And of course, Now, we are being shown a path that they are clearly liable to a criminal sanction, and that's ought to apply.